Hey, it's Travis. Too many camp directors run just on gut feel. Our free Resilient Camp Blueprint Diagnostic is your dashboard for resilience. Take it today at camp.mba/Travis. Again, that's camp.mba/Travis. So, now where do we go from here?
This is CampHacker. Come find our show notes and our blog for camp directors and leaders at camphacker.tv.
A huge thank you to our sponsors who make the CampHacker podcast possible. You don't lead camp because you love the office. UltraCamp has everything you need to manage your program so you can spend more time doing what you love. Manage staff, register campers, take payments, and direct communication all in one place. Find out more at ultracampmanagement.com/camphacker. Scheduling is the backbone of every camper's experience, but when there's a staffing change, it's almost impossible to fill that role with someone who knows all the nuances a schedule takes. Come check Camptivities out, specifically designed for camps by camp people. Find out more at camptivities.com.
Hello, Camp Mavericks, and welcome to the CampHacker podcast, brought to you by UltraCamp and Camptivities, and of course, Go Camp Pro. My name is Travis Allison. I'm a summer camp marketing and strategy consultant.
And my name is Gabrielle Rail, and I'm one of the camp directors at Camp Waro.
My name is Joe Richards, and I am the executive director of Pierce Williams, which is a summer camp and retreat facility and part of the United Church of Canada's camping network.
Welcome to both of you. Chris is on holidays, and a well-deserved holiday, so it's the three of us for now, for today. So we want to welcome all of you watching on YouTube and listening in your car while you're walking the dishes and washing the dog. Both of those things. We're grateful to have you here. We'd love it if you went to ratethispodcast.com/camp and then click the ratings and review button. That shares reviews out to different apps so people can help make a decision about whether they want to subscribe to CampHacker based on your reviews there. So we're grateful. Thank you. Last time we recorded with Chris, we were talking about what happened in the summer of 2022, how it was hard, why it was hard, etc. But we wanted to spend today talking about, so what's next? What do we do to get ready for next summer now? I want to thank Andy Pritikin from the Day Camp Pod for giving me a little bit of feedback that I've been mulling over a lot since he sent it to me. Andy said, and if you listen to Day Camp Pod, you know that Andy ran camp a little bit in 2020 and basically fully in 2021. And so he said for him that not all camps are going to be at the same place where our three directors are. And I think that's really valid. There are lots of people across North America who are in the same space as Gab and Joe and Chris, and having pulled camp together in 2022 for the first time in 2 years. But obviously that's not the situation for everybody. So this I would consider an open invitation to give us your feedback and ideas, because the camps that were first reopened in 22 we're going to talk about some very specific issues there. Obviously, some of you had those issues last year and prepared how to do it. I'm most curious about the things that were still hard, if it's your second summer being reopened. So that's kind of where we're going to spend some time today. And I thank Andy for the thoughtfulness in reaching out to do that. If you ever want to have a question or a comment, send it to Travis at gocamp.pro. So if we're getting ready for next summer now, what sort of things, Joe, are you thinking? What's on your mental list for getting ready?
Well, Andy's point is an interesting one, because a lot of the things aren't regarding reopening. They're regarding the mental health and just the place where people seem to be at. And so things that are on my mind are change, right? So I had I had my camp director and my program coordinator approach me about doing a presentation for me on changing the way we do things at Pierce Williams. And they gave me about a week and a half's notice. That was great. And the whole time, leading up to it, I thought, look for a way to say yes, right? If these are the young people who are doing the work on the ground, who am I to say no? And so, but I'm always very cautious to make sure that we don't change things just because something happened one-off, right? So when a parent contacts you about a very specific issue that has never happened before, be it a parent or be it a rental group, do you need to create a policy specifically for that? No. And so I think the things I'm thinking most about are staff training and number of staff, and the layout of the program to make it more to give our staff more focus so they don't have as much as many things to think about. So in the past at Pierce Williams, our counselors have also been our programmers, and they've created a session that they might run 2 times a week. And so part of moving forward in the short term is to take the programming away from that, and so they can focus on being amazing counselors. And that was the presentation that Piper and Shuffle gave to me, who are the 2 staff. And I was like, yeah, like we can have dedicated programmers. That's something that camps do all the time, and we have in the past, and we can go back to that. And part of my belief is that when I think about staff training and think about the number of staff, I think those will alleviate a lot of the challenges we had dealing with campers. I don't know, like campers come as campers come. And I don't quite know what that's going to, how another year in school is going to help them, but I'm sure it will help them a bit.
Yep. How about you, Gabs? What's your mental list look like?
I mean, I'm trying to admit to the stuff that I don't know or I don't understand, and then create that list. I know that we didn't have enough time for our staff training last year. We've added in some sessions that were necessary, and then it made it so that other sessions that were also necessary became compacted. And I feel there's just more to learn, and building trust is more necessary than ever. So this year, just straight out the gate, we've added 1 extra day to our staff training. And then we've also added a 5-hour paid online onboarding. And that could be anything from, we don't know what that's going to look like yet, but I know it's going to be flexible for our staff. And it could be anything from hiring a guest speaker to chatting with our internationals about what to pack, that kind of thing. So sort of that onboarding. And our leadership team training we've bumped it up to 4 extra days. And all of this is obviously a financial decision that we're able to make. We've also raised our prices for our families because inflation, but also the support that we need at camp is going to cost more, including having our leadership team members be even more prepared. And we're quite prepared for staff training, I'd like to say. But I want us to be so prepared that we are extremely present so that we can build those connections and see or foresee any bumps in the road. So these are just a couple of things that we've done without having much of a chance yet to completely process the summer and what we need.
Yeah. So thinking about the last time the 4 of us recorded together, I know that everybody has had at least 1 episode in between those. But if I'm looking for patterns, I think the biggest thing that sticks out is the need for psychological and mental health support for staff, for a return to real basics with staff that, simple things like how do you motivate kids to move from place to place together? And what do you do when your meal's done at your table and no one else is done and you have time to fill? Or how do you get your kids singing and joining in the morning when they get dropped off in the bus around the flagpole? How do you get them to connect again after yesterday? You've got this morning. So there's some things there. One of the things I'm thinking about if we're talking about solutions is how much will communication help us? Obviously, that's how I think about things. It's just the way my brain works. How can we communicate our way out of this? And so that's some of the questions that I've been thinking about. But maybe, Cap, there's something that sticks out or something that you want to talk more about, or in more details about, the conversations you've had, or really just what your list looks like.
My list looks like cleaning house with a purpose is what my list looks like. I'm trying to look at the type of staff that I want to build camp with, and the type of people I want to build camp with, and the type of people that are maybe excited is the wrong word, but excited about finding a path to solutions and possibilities, and accepting that shit's hard right now. It's difficult. And actually being like, I'm okay with that challenge. I'm not interested in working with individuals that are able to point out the errors or the difficulties, and not willing to understand that process takes a process and it takes time. And I'm saying that specifically in the sense that I feel that way towards our staff members, and I feel that way towards our families as well. I want to work with our families, and for the most part, our families have been very supportive, and I want to nurture that relationship more. But with a parent, if their value systems aren't connecting with ours, or if they're not interested in doing some of the work with us, I'm not interested in spending time on those individuals. And the same with our staff members. As a whole, I find our staff to be pretty darn awesome. But of course, you're going to get individuals that have their own hang-ups, or they've gone through their own year, and I'm not here to judge that. But I can't make time for somebody that's digging their heels in. And I like giving second chances, but I'm not so much for next summer, because we're in such a fragile state. I'm interested in dreaming and saying this is going to be hard, but like, who's with me? Sort of Lord of the Rings situation. We got to go and get the ring in the thing and make sure it's going to be hard, but who's with me? And we're allowed to say it sucks, and we're allowed to say this is hard. But I'm okay with that as long as we're doing it together. And so that's what I'm interested in. And it's a broken record at this point, but I always start with a small group that is interested in that, and highlight what are the main issues, and what's the direction we want to go into. And I'm looking at that specifically for staff hiring. How do we want to adjust our staff hiring so that we're tapping into people that are excited about this challenge? Because this is a true challenge. This is not summer camp is hard. No, it's summer camp and all of these added issues that we've had to pivot constantly around. And I think that I'm definitely making space financially for support on leadership team members that can only commit for maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month in the summer, and build that relationship with our full-time leadership team members throughout the year, so that there's a strong support system that can come in, and not sort of, sometimes I know as camps, we want to, if you're committing for the summer and that's that, if you can't come for the whole summer, then you can't come. And I think I don't want to throw any of those people away. If they're able to come, I want them to be part of the team though, starting now.
Yeah.
That's all amazing. And I think the communication thing is key. I think that you want solution finders, right? You don't, it's easy to point out what's wrong. It's easy to point out where we need to improve. But what I would rather do is have people who can start to find those solutions and move forward. I think that other changes that we've put in place is the idea that last summer we raised our staff pay quite substantially. And I think as you walk around the world now and you see all of the help wanted signs, I do not think that the same old is going to get you who you used to get. Just as the same old doesn't, those people don't do the same work. Our youth today seem to need, that we're working with, seem to need something that we didn't provide in the past, maybe, or more delineation. I think one of the things that we're doing, Travis, that is, and I thought ahead because I think ahead a lot. I found grant money to host what we're calling youth nights, Pierce Williams Youth Nights. And because, just for everybody who's listening, and if you're new, the majority of our staff live within 1 hour of our facility. So let's start with that. And the majority of our staff are high school aged. That's another thing. We hire at 16. Pierce Williams Youth Nights is a leadership and mentorship program that is really staff recruiting disguised as a leadership mentorship program that I found grant.
Of course, yes.
Because what you want to do is get local youth from the Elgin, St. Thomas, London area where we are located here in Ontario, and get them in community with each other, which is something they need after the pandemic, and to be in that space and not a space where we're like, it's not school, it's not fully educational, it's not all of those things. It's more the community aspect. And then recruit those staff to come on board, and not just as one-off staff years. And I think that's the other key, Gabs, is we're looking for people who, I know that I'm looking for people who can commit to 2 or 3 more summers. So the rebuilding process is easier. So I will use experienced alumni who can only come for a certain number of weeks. But the reality is I'll hire younger staff now and give them more training so that we can build into that 3 to 4 year timeline of having staff back. And I started that in 2021 when we didn't run camp, but we did hire 10 staff who were 16 and 17 who can now give me a few more years.
So next, our podcast is sponsored this episode by CampTivities. There's this moment in a camp director where you end a call and your mind is just spinning, just thinking, who can do all of these things? Who can schedule all of the pieces that I have to pull together to make a summer work? Where will I find the time to train the people that do this, to explain all the nuances and details to make sure that schedules come out the right way? The only people who know anything about scheduling at my camp already have so much on their plates. And then you think to yourself, does this mean a lot of late nights catching up, getting scheduling done? I remember my first summer as a program director, sometimes scheduling till 3 a.m. But there's a solution for this. You quickly search for Google for Camp Activity Scheduler, and you come across CampTivities. It's an activity scheduler for camps by camp people. If you click the link, you're already thinking, this would never work for me. But you begin to look through things anyway. You explore the possibilities and look at what they have to offer. There's group scheduling. There's individual camper scheduling. There's batch scheduling. Now you're starting to get more interested. There's manual adjustments based on things that you need. There's elective scheduling. There's tons of customizable settings and more than 50 reports that you can work with. And then you start to just say to yourself, this might actually work for us, and it could save us all a ton of time. When you think about your organizational continuity and stop relying on just that one person to make all of your summer schedules, then you're getting to a point where camp becomes more manageable, where you can do the big things. And so CampTivities would love to share with you the next big thing in camp. Don't wait. Start the onboarding process with them now. And when you have the time, you can visit camptivities.com and set up a time to chat with them. Let them help you get away from your desk and back out into camp. Joe, how did you pay for raising staff salaries so much?
I just took a guess. We raised our camp rates.
Okay.
Our weekly rates. So we are on the tier-based system. And prior to the pandemic, we had started to shrink our tiers together. And so after the pandemic, our rates were a full $75 more for the highest tier for 1 week of camp.
$75 more than the year before, or $75 more than the tier below?
$75 more than the last year we took campers.
Okay. Right.
And so I think last year our rates were, I'm just guessing right now, but I think it was $500 for a week of camp, which I know isn't enough. And $575 for our tier 1, what we wanted people to pay. And we saw a very interesting stat. I know that Travis and Gab know this, but we have been on the tier-based system since 2008. We have a data sheet that tracks who paid what each year, our number of camper weeks, and who paid what. And this year it flipped, and it went to more people paying the highest tier. There was only a $75 difference between them. And next year, that difference will be even smaller. I think it'll be $65 in between. But we had like 70%, 60 to 70% of our parents pay the highest tier last year. And so that made enough additional income to fund the staffing, plus with government grants. So here in Canada, we use the Canada Summer Jobs grant to help fund that. But that is how we increase staff pay. Because if you didn't increase staff pay, how are you going to get staff? That was the other thing.
Right.
There were camps that chose not to run in the middle of July in Ontario because they couldn't find staff. And I'm like, that's way too late to let parents know. How do you ever rebuild from that?
Sure. That's kind of a betrayal of that trust, the trust. Gab, you said something that, well, you've said it many times, but I want to highlight it. Woro has made such a huge commitment to keeping in touch with, working with leadership team throughout the year. Woro is in no way a camp that starts thinking about staff in January.
No.
You're connected to your senior staff. You keep them involved. You pay them for their work throughout the year. How would you... I mean, for one, every time we get into money, people get panicky because their parents are saying camp is so expensive.
Yeah.
But obviously there are those that charge way more than any of the three active camps represented here, and have no problem filling. But anyway, that's a different issue. My question is, how would you suggest that a camp starts to do that connecting throughout the year? I think that leans into my communication question, because you're keeping your staff involved.
So I'll give a quick very, very quick history. Like a lot of camp directors, we're like a one-person show. And I remember hiring, from my apartment, in the Plateau of Montreal, all of the staff members that either came to my apartment or it was phone calls because we didn't have Zoom or Skype at the time. And that was my 9 to 5, pretty much hiring and interviewing and reference checks. And then, yes, some marketing. And then the business side was taken care of by Jackie. And then we also had a registrar. So we were 3 people that were working. And what I was noticing was that there was no space for us to develop on even programs, marketing, or even staff training. There was just such little time to do so. And the other thing that we noticed was that we had these amazing leadership team members that were looking for part-time jobs throughout the year. And then sometimes those jobs would lead to full-time summer job positions and we would lose them. And I found that very frustrating. And so we started a program called, the development team. So what we call in short, dev team. And that started with 2 other people and they helped with hiring. And we worked around their school schedule. Hiring is very schedule based. So that works out very, very well. With Zoom, it works even better. And what that did was it allowed us to start immediately our staff hiring, even if leadership team members were not committed for the next year. So we had capable individuals that cared about Woro, that knew what it took. We gave them a small, obviously, training program on how to interview. Slack helped out a lot with our communication, building relationships. And I'll tell you that we started the dev program 5 or 6 years ago. And this summer, where we had 10 past leadership team members, so alumni that were leadership team members, out of the 10, 9 of them were part of our dev team that returned and took time out of either their time off, or they took time off from their full-time positions to come and work with us this summer. And some are teachers, so that worked out. Others took their whole vacation, almost their entire vacation, to come and support us this summer. And so it's also created a mentality within our organization that alumni, especially leadership team members, and they have to be the right ones. I'm not saying all of them are right for that, but pretty much the ones that do stick around after 2, 3, 4 years, understand what it takes. They really take on a mentorship role with our leadership team when they're first coming in. And those first year leadership team and second year leadership team members are ecstatic when the Natashas or the Heidis or the Zipkins or the whoever, Sophie's, Matisse's come in, because they know that they know how to do this job and that they have their back. So financially, it wasn't that big of a shift because we could adjust according to our budget, how many interviews we wanted our dev team to take. And now it has evolved into doing interviews, but then also creating task force for building staff community. And we always choose one specific subject that we want to tackle for that summer. And the dev team gets to be part of that conversation. And this year, our development team, there was only 2 that had returned as leadership team members. The rest all had to do other things, but those leadership team members that weren't able to come back, I truly believe it's because they had such a hard summer the year before. And I also think that sometimes camp directors can get a little salty, being like, why aren't they returning? We allowed them to have a space after camp, which was part of the dev team, to contribute to camp in a way that felt good for them. And all of their hard work allowed us to have the team that we had this summer. And those individuals I'm still in touch with. And I know I'll have a positive relationship with them. I do have a positive relationship with them, even though 2021 was so tough. But it set up our 2022 leadership team members really, really well. So you can incorporate financially if you're saying, I can afford 10 hours a week or 5 hours a week and split that up. I mean, 5 staff members, 2.5 hours a week. That's just something that they get to look forward to. And then on top of it, your team gets to meet the staff that are coming. And so you're not the only point of reference, or there's not just 2 other people that are point of reference. You have 5, 6, 7 people that are point of reference for your new staff for that summer.
Yeah. Thank you. Mm-hmm. One of the pieces I pick out on that, and I've seen it happen so well for Waro, is the continuity, how the idea is the lessons get passed from time to time, even just how this is how the program should run, gets passed easier from generation to generation, summer to summer. But there's also obviously that sense of advice. I always thought it'd be fun to have I've said this many times in the podcast, I'm sure, but it'd be fun to have like a past program director support group for this summer's program director, and pass that on. Joe, what do you folks do to make sure lessons don't get lost between summer and summer?
In a normal world before COVID and now as well, we have final reports or transition reports. And that's a lesson I learned at the Taylor Staton camps when I was there, right? Is that you could look back to 1950 reports if you found that binder and see how things were done in 1950. And so those transition reports and in the office, we've moved it a lot to tracking processes, right? Because if you're listening to this and your camp made it through COVID and you ran in 2020 and ran in 2021 and nothing changed, then that's amazing. Strange, weird, but amazing. For us, losing full-time staff and not having that continuity of counselors growing, the transition reports were really valuable, but you also realize what they don't have. Right. So when your program coordinator, reads a transition report and it's like, oh, well, we did this thing. And I'm like, yeah, but you also have to do this thing, and this thing. It reminds me, many years ago, I had a camp director who happens to now be my head cook, Ika, who had been at camp from a CIT in 2006 all the way to a 5-year full-time camp director, and left us in 2017, 2016. And there was just a ton of stuff that had never been formalized in her job, right? And just stuff she did. So when we had a new staff take that position on, Iskis, Matt Hansberger, it made me realize, oh, there's just a ton of stuff that Ika knew but never wrote down that a new director still has to do, but we don't. So that was a good precursor to the pandemic, in that we needed to make sure we knew those small things and who does them. But I think and passing along, what we learned this year, Travis, was that bringing alumni back is great. And I'm not sure if you had this, but having a job description and how those alumni interact is even more important, right? Because what you got was some people who thought they were still employed, that weren't being paid. They were volunteer, but they were making decisions that weren't theirs to make, or they were disciplining staff that weren't theirs to discipline, which then leads to confusion. And it led us to think, okay, well, we need clearly defined boundaries for these people so that they know exactly what their role is. And we also had an experience this summer, very unfortunately, where an alumni came back, and it triggered one of our staff because of some of the stuff that happened years ago with this staff member. So you never know. And I'm just like, well, that person can't come back to camp, right? Like and at what reason do you give them? I'm like, well, things like that are always important to take into consideration, but having the processes and I love the idea of just paying some staff year round, right? 5 hours a week, 2 hours a week. Currently on my youth nights program, I'm paying 2 staff 5 hours a week, and I'll be great, be fine.
Cool. Well, I hope everybody listening and watching got some ideas, some new thoughts, and hopefully inspiration to consider tackling the problems that seem to do it. Now, Gab, I know you've got one more thing to wrap us up. I'll throw to you, and then we'll head into the tool of the week.
Awesome. I think for summer, like a lot of us have experienced that maybe has thrown a lot of us on our butts, and we're still dusting ourselves off. I think for me, I'm trying to approach every decision that's being made just a lot calmer. And even if there's actually, it's where there isn't decisions, I'm actually, and it's part of our norm. It's in our calendars. Okay, we send out this at this time, we do this. I'm trying to pause and say, is this going to help us? Is this going to hinder us? Questioning almost everything that we're doing, and not in a critical way, but in a way of it's easy to put a blanket a little bit over our heads and say, we have to go back to status quo, and we'll tweak just this here, and we'll tweak just this there. I think that there is, I think that we can take the opportunity right now to pause and ask questions and say, does this make sense on how we're speaking to our families? Does this make sense in our interview process? Is there another way? What is the biggest problematic that we have right now? And when we're interacting with our community, or do we have that at the forefront of our actions? And so anything that's almost automatic, I'm trying to not make it automatic and pause and say, what's the impact of this, and how can we do it differently if it's necessary? So just trying to slow down and even get more intentional if that's possible.
Great, thank you. Thank you both. So if folks have questions or comments, again, Travis at gocamp.pro, I can pass it on to everybody. I especially love passing on kudos to the hosts for when we get those. So if you do that, I check the ratings, but it's always wonderful to get an email. So thank you for that. I also want to thank UltraCamp for sponsoring CampHacker this episode. So exclusive to CampHacker listeners, you can increase staff retention by staying in touch with your camp staff all year long. You can download UltraCamp's staff communication calendar that includes pre-written prompts for free by visiting ultracampmanagement.com/CampHacker. Do you remember why you chose to get involved in camp to make this your life? UltraCamp knows it wasn't because you love the paperwork part. That's because they built a platform that streamlines managing each piece of your program all in one place. You have no more having to learn and remember different platforms to run your camp. With UltraCamp, you can register and manage campers, generate and direct communication, organize schedules and activities, process payments and donations. UltraCamp's goal is to help their clients spend less time in the office and more time doing what they love. If you want to know if UltraCamp is the right fit for you, they offer free customized demo sessions so you can see their software in action. Sign up at ultracampmanagement.com/CampHacker. Time now is for our tool of the week.
Tool of the week.
I forget who went first last time, so I'm going to go first this time. I want to thank Ari Polsky, who has been a host on CampHacker a number of times, for sending me a private message about this. It's a camp alumni. Her name is Sophie, and she was a camp counselor, and she has a website and an Instagram called The Conversationalist. So if you go to camphacker.tv/podcast, you'll find the show notes for this episode 172, and you can find the links to this. Ari had heard Sophie speak and sent me the stuff to do the research. She's amazing. Her whole thing, her purpose with this organization is to unify and amplify Gen Z. And so it's all about people sitting down to have honest conversations, and she facilitates nice, open conversations. And if you are not Gen Z, which many of us won't be, I think it's a great insight. It's a great to watch how people do this well, engage in good conversations, and bring people together. So you can search Instagram for The Conversationalist, or again, you can go to camphacker.tv/podcast. Gabs, what's your tool of the week?
My tool of the week is a podcast that was shared with me by my favorite sisters, the Trudeau sisters, and it's called Maintenance Phase. And the podcast is all about debunking junk science behind health and wellness fads. And I feel that sometimes at camp, because we're responsible for so much, and if you're responsible for food, sometimes things are thrown at me, and I don't, I'm not quite sure about the wellness piece behind it. Of course, we have a dietitian and everything like that, but I find it really, really helpful in understanding a little bit more the wellness culture that's out there, and they really debunk a lot of myths. And I also just love the banter between the two hosts.
That's perfect. Thank you. Joe, what's your tool?
My tool is something called a Stream Deck, so a Stream Deck is a little box. The link will take you to two different ones. The one I have is a 15 button one. You can train the box to be a website opener, right? So you can train a button to just open a website or open your, open your mail. The reality is that it is made for streamers so that it can do light setups, camera changes, all of those things. So if you do a ton of presentations, that's a great use. But from a productivity standpoint is why I bought it, for Notion and for graphic design. And then there's just little things it'll do, like my Pomodoro timer for 25 minutes. I have a little tomato on the screen, and you can change the little button screens digitally. So I have a Pomodoro timer, and I just press it and it counts down. And at the end of 25 minutes, because you can program your own sound into it, these are all very simple steps. I have a crowd cheer me on at the end of 25 minutes that I got through it. And it is a brilliant piece of technology. And it's just a little box that is wired to your computer, and it sits close to probably your mouse hand or your other hand, where you can just press those things. So it's like a variety of shortcuts, and you can put folders within it. So you're not limited to just 15 things. You can put a folder and then get another 15 things out of that folder. So it's hard to explain, but if you search YouTube for Stream Deck and productivity, you'll see some great videos. It's not inexpensive. It's a couple of $100, but well worth it if you sit at a computer most of the day that's in the same space.
That's great. I love it. And I love it as a productivity tool as well. It's really fun. I know both of you use Elgato Stream Decks.
Yeah. We were geeking out just before the show recording over it.
Well, and as we said before the show, we still have a ton to learn about it, because it's such it's like any of your software programs. it can do so much more than you think it can. And we're only using it to, there's so much more it can do.
So cool.
That's excellent. Thank you both. So thank you both for being on the show. Thank you for all of the stuff that you contribute. Before I say goodbye to you, I also want to do one other thing and ask everybody to go please check out the Day Camp Pod. Andy Pritikin that I mentioned is one of our fabulous hosts on the Day Camp Pod, and they have a great show that's really practical, really purposeful. And I've had lots of people who are not day camp directors say how much they enjoy and get out of it. So it's a show for everybody with a distinct focus on day camp. So we're grateful to them. And I invite you to just search in your podcast app for the Day Camp Pod. If you want to get a hold of Gabs and Joe, you can find their information on the website at camphacker.tv/podcast. Thanks for the evening, friends.
The Camp Hacker podcast is brought to you by Beth and Travis Allison, summer camp leadership training and marketing consultants. Thanks for listening. Camp Hacker, bringing your world into focus.
Hey, Camp Pros. We love that our industry is built on sharing. In order to foster that spirit, if you've gotten even one good idea from a Go Camp Pro podcast, masterclass, from the Summer Camp Professionals group, a conference, or wherever else, we ask that you give credit where credit is due. That way, it'll encourage camp pros to keep freely sharing their ideas and make the camp industry as a whole better.
Hey, it's Travis. Camp directors often tell me they're just too tired to take on anything new. That's exactly why my free Resilient Camp Blueprint Diagnostic exists. It doesn't add work. It shows you progress. Quick, free, repeatable. You'll know if your systems are paying off without the guesswork. Try it today at camp.mba/Travis. That's camp.mba/Travis.